Hello there, I'm Noel Hacegaba, Chief Operating Officer at the Port of Long Beach. Welcome to Supply Chain Insight, where we discuss the latest news, issues, and trends in the supply chain with top industry leaders, experts, and influencers. Our objective is to bring you the insight you need to help you keep your cargo moving. Today's business executives expect a lot from their supply chains: efficiency, velocity, flexibility, cost management, and operational excellence. Supply Chain Insight brings the supply chain to you, one segment at a time, to explore new approaches and innovative solutions that will help you and the Port of Long Beach deliver greater value to our customers and partners. In today's episode, we will hear from one of the industry's most influential voices on supply chain and ports, Ines Nastali. Ines is an award-winning journalist and senior supply chain analyst within the Global Intelligence and Analytics team of S&P Global Market Intelligence, where she covers and conducts research on trade and logistics. In prior roles, she worked within the IMO ships and company team, focusing on sanctioned vessels and beneficial ownership. She also edited the publications Ports and Harbors and Dredging and Ports Construction on behalf of S&P Global Market Intelligence. Ines specializes in multimedia and data-driven storytelling and has successfully utilized dredging, maritime, and trade data to translate those data sets into interactive visualizations to give insight into fleet data, port infrastructure developments, and shipbuilding trends. Ines is also a frequent moderator of webinars and conferences at some of the industry's largest forums, including TPM, the IAPH World Ports Conference, and the annual WISTA Conference. She earned her master's degree in journalism from City University, London. Ines, welcome to Supply Chain Insight. We are so thrilled to have you on today. I've had the pleasure of answering your questions in the past, and now it's my turn to ask you the questions. And I know there's a lot to talk about when it comes to supply chain, and I know that our viewing audience will benefit immensely from your insights today. So let's jump right in. So 2024 was our busiest year on record here in Long Beach. Our marine terminal operators and dock workers handled 9.6 million TEUs, putting us 20% ahead of the prior year. And despite these record volumes, we did not see any of the delays or backlogs that were prevalent during the supply chain crisis. We took several measures to keep cargo moving and container dwell at manageable levels. I attribute much of this to the muscle memory that we all developed during the supply chain crisis. Here's a question for you. Is our experience reflective of what you saw at ports across the US and around the world?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think firstly, I think that's a very good result that you've achieved there, and I think that's definitely, as you said, attributed to that you have experienced those disruptions and then you have acted on it. So I think that has to be commended, right? So that's that's obviously a great step, and I think other ports have done this as well. I think there was no shortage of disruptions that we've seen in the last few years that were kind of training exercise, as you say, to train that, that muscle memory and make us a bit stronger, flex our risk muscles a little bit more. I think ports have reacted in different ways. Definitely enhanced technology, I think, is something we've seen. From what I've seen, ports have encouraged, their customers as well and their shippers to diversify and, maybe reduce dependencies on single sources, because obviously, ports are also working together in networks. I think that can kind of mitigate risks. And lastly, I think what I want to mention here is risk management. I think ports develop definitely more comprehensive risk management strategies, contingency planning, scenario analysis, to prepare for different types of disruption. And I would think more than ever before, again, because there were so many chances having that real life disruption, to see how well you're set up. And it seems like the Port of Long Beach is set up well.
I can tell you here in Long Beach, as you said, and thank you for that recognition, all the thanks to our partners, right? Our ILW dock workers, our marine terminal operators, shipping lines, trucking companies, railroads, because everyone came together. They, like you said, they flexed that muscle memory. So let me ask you this question, because I think this is worth asking. Are you seeing improved coordination between vessel operators, port terminals, truck operators, and the railroads? And what role do you see data transparency and collaboration playing in that regard?
Yes, for sure. There's definitely been a noticeable improvement in that coordination between those stakeholders. And I think you're right. I think they're driven by exactly those two factors, data sharing and collaborative kind of logistics. So on the data sharing side, I think that has allowed for more synchronized operations, real-time tracking, visibility of shipments. They enable, better planning and coordination, but also give you an overview of what is happening in your port, and also giving you an overview of what do you want where you can make improvements. For example, reduce waiting times. Are there certain crunches where you can work on, and thereby improve your overall efficiency? And then on the kind of collaboration side, I think many ports and terminals are kind of adopting more collaborative models where they work together with the different stakeholders to optimize the flow of goods. That can include joint planning sessions. I'm sure that's something that you do as well. And also share resources because to kind of improve coordination, because there is no point if everyone does the same work twice,
Right.
especially if we're working on the same project. So we're facing the same risks, we're facing the same issues, I would think. So I think that sharing as well. It's the data sharing, but it's also sharing of knowledge that I think is important. And then lastly, maybe a third kind of point, that technology integration. I think the adoption. I mean, I've kind of touched on that earlier. And the adoption of digital platforms. Transportation management systems, terminal operating systems. I think that is definitely an improvement to help data sharing, with trucking companies, rail operators. I think that will hopefully in future then even more reduce delays.
And data transparency and data sharing has become a global topic of conversation among sports. And one of the key words I hear a lot is data collaboration, right? Which syncs up the actual technology with the processes. And that's what you just described. And to your point, the only way we're going to make the entire system optimal, right, is if we ensure there's that level of collaboration, coordination, and we have technology solutions that actually help us sync up, which is critically important. One way we're enhancing fluidity and reliability here in Long Beach is by enabling more on-dock rail container moves. And to support this, we're building out our rail capacity to support more intermodal container moves. The centerpiece of this investment is our Pier B on-dock rail support facility, also known as America's Green Gateway. Moving containers directly from the port to the nation's key inland rail hubs via train is faster, safer, and more sustainable. Do you see other ports adopting similar strategies?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. The intermodal facilities, I think that's an important factor also towards efficiency, but also towards decarbonization. It transport supports the kind of seamless transfer between trucks and trains, being able to book services at the same time. I think that's important, because obviously those facilities are designed to kind of minimize handling times and therefore enhance connectivity between the different modes of transport. And it's a sort of convenience to the customer as well, right? If you're able to book services at once and then have an increased transshipment traffic, that will make your operations more efficient. And then I think we have also seen regulatory support here, where governments and regulatory bodies are increasingly recognizing the importance of these intermodal transportation possibilities, and are therefore implementing policies that promote better coordination among terminals, trucks, and trains.
On that train of thought, Ines, what other strategies do you see being taken to enhance fluidity, velocity, and reliability at ports around the globe?
Yeah, I think for me, the introduction of port community systems is a key
Yes.
development. I know this is something that is still underway. I think, there's obviously regulation behind this from the IMO to have this as a standard. But I think port community systems, they facilitate information sharing among all stakeholders, which then again leads to improved coordination and reduced dwell times. I think this is some globally, in some ports still kind of lagging, needs to be therefore pushed as an agenda, in my opinion, for the ports industry, because it will significantly improve services for the port user. And then the kind of usual tips and tricks, infrastructure upgrades, deeper berths, expanded cargo handling facilities.
Yes.
We've seen all of that. With the aforementioned improved road and rail connections, to helps also, to accommodate larger vessels and increased overall, traffic. I think this is especially important to the US ports, because the average depth in ports for the US, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is 13 meters, and ultra large container vessels, I think, need at least 16 meters. So if you want to, this might be something for some ports to look into as well, to see how many, what vessel size on average do I receive, and do I need to work on that? Do I need to increase the depth of my port?
Based on everything you just described, Long Beach is a microcosm of that. I'd like to say that we're about 15, 16 years into our Big Ship Ready campaign, right? When the average size vessels was about 8,000 back then. Today, I mean, we're seeing 23,000 TEU ships, in large part because of all the work we've done in the past in dredging, upgrading our facilities, investing in infrastructure, everything you just said. So it's nice to hear someone who has this global view say this is what ports need to do in order to enhance velocity, reliability, and efficiency. And that's exactly what we've done here in Long Beach in partnership with all of our stakeholders, right? ILWU, the terminal operators, shipping lines. So let's talk about supply chain resilience. It's become a buzzword coming out of the supply chain crisis. And it's now top of mind for ports around the globe. Preparing for the next, quote, black swan, end quote, event is critical to keep cargo moving and supporting the economy. What are some ways the supply chain has built resilience into the conveyance of cargo?
Definitely conducting thorough risk assessments. I've mentioned that earlier. I think some, ports have already looked at this. It is probably something to continue to keep an eye on, and kind of include the potential kind of scenarios. Maybe also, low probability, high impact events. I mean, we have seen that plane overturn at the airport in Canada yesterday or 2 days ago. That is not something that the crew said they have specifically trained for, or that where experts said they have specifically trained this for, but the crew seemingly, from the footage I've seen, was excellent at getting passengers safely off that plane. So there must be some transferability between, the risk assessment and the training that they have received and this actual situation. And I'm sure there's something that we can learn in the maritime industry from there as well. I mean, an upside down vessel, maybe something for the next training for the Port of Long Beach. And I think that can help identify vulnerabilities and kind of develop tailored strategies. And then kind of engage in scenario planning, simulation exercises. We have the possibility to go digital here, and you can create a digital twin of the port and kind of, do these exercises that I think help port authorities, also the stakeholders in the port, understand their impacts. And then again, upgrading infrastructure, not only, to accommodate larger vessels, but also we're seeing more extreme weather events. So that's something to prepare for as well.
Those are some very good observations. And as speaking of resilience, what's the status of the Panama Canal? Are shipping lines still managing through capacity constraints? And what's the latest on the Suez Canal and Red Sea diversions and corresponding impact of shadow fleets on ports?
Yes, yeah. See, there we have some more issues that ports are facing. The current situation in the Panama Canal is stable. Obviously, we've seen some constraints. Again, that was mainly due to changing weather as well, right? Having those low water levels in the canal, something that needs to be managed, and something that probably needs to be managed in future as well. But it seems like that the authority has this under control at the moment. We haven't seen any attacks so far this year by the Houthis in the Red Sea. but we still see the diversions towards the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. So from looking at our S&P Global Market Intelligence data, we can see that of the 4 major ship types, the bulk carriers, general cargo, tankers, the container ships are the most impacted by the diversions around the Cape of Good Hope to escape those Houthi attack threats in the Red Sea, which saw Suez Canal transits plummet over the past year. Looking at AIS data showing those transits and comparing them between 2023, 2024, we can see that triple the number of transits were made via the Cape in 2024 by container ships compared to 2023, and only a third of 2023 transits were made through the Suez Canal. And that is while overall the same number of transits were made. So this is comparing like for like here. And even though the Cape adds around 10 days of extra voyage time. Regarding the shadow fleet, that is maybe not so much a focus topic for US ports or waters, but since the G7 price cap was enforced in December 2022, that still limits the export of Russian oil. We have seen a shadow fleet of tankers emerge that traverse the seas from Russia via Europe and then to Asia. So just as a bit of background. For ports, this means increased inspection and compliance costs. Ports may need to enhance their inspection protocols and also compliance measures to identify and manage vessels that are part of the shadow fleet that is already in operation in European ports. These sanctioned tankers cannot call at European ports. And I think as ports become more vigilant in monitoring incoming and outgoing vessels, there could then be delays in cargo handling and processing time, which could affect supply chain efficiency.
You know, even though we don't see that, like you said, we don't really see the shadow fleets in the US, but as I'd like to say, disruption anywhere in the global supply chain eventually, cascades or trickles down. And so there may be some indirect effects. I had a question for you. How are these workarounds, right, around the Suez, Panama Canal, reshaping trade lanes and routing decisions by shippers and ocean carriers?
Yeah, I think we can talk a bit. The carriers for now have decided they will continue to go via the Cape, but we'll have the IMO MEPC meeting, the Environmental Committee meeting this year that will decide on a market-based measure, on a levy, and that will then again also kind of change trade lanes, because as we know, when we then in future have alternative fuels come in, they need to be bunkered more. That is a chance for ports, of course.
Yes.
But that will also kind of maybe change trade lanes, because more port calls might be possible for ports that have been on the map basically of trade lanes. So again, loads of different possibilities here.
And I'm glad you touched on that, Ines, because, and I like your answers generally because they're holistic in nature, right? You do a nice job of connecting all the different pieces. Because another major focus of the global supply chain is sustainability and the energy transition, which you already covered. I mean, here at the Port of Long Beach, we're actually celebrating the 20th anniversary of our pioneering green port policy, which set us on a path we're on today to get to zero emissions operations. So I appreciate you touching that. In the few moments we have left, though, we have this major conference, right? The industry's flagship conference coming up here in Long Beach. So would you mind giving us a quick preview of TPM 25?
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be even bigger than before. There is going to be more space for exhibition. There's going to be more space for networking. There are so many different content tracks again that we will see. There will be a great keynote that we will hear. And yeah, it seems like this is going to be the big must attend event of the year, as we have seen in the past as well. And we will have colleagues from S&P there as well, who will be able to talk a bit more about the supply chain as well. My colleague Chris Rogers will be there, and he will talk about also the issues that the port industry faces, especially with the tariff discussions that we will see in the US. That is something we will definitely see a lot of discussions at TPM. And he will also kind of focus on the warehousing situation as well, which is something always to keep an eye on as well. So yeah, it should be a very busy event, and I've heard you've planned a few good events as well at TPM.
We do, and we could not be happier to be the host city, the host port for this major events that brings the who's who of the industry here. And what is interesting is a lot of what we talked about today is going to be discussed at TPM, and there's so many other topics. But what I would like to leave our audience with today, Ines, is if you could give the shippers and the supply chain stakeholders who are watching this some advice, especially those who are tasked with navigating uncertainty, managing disruptions for the balance of the year, what advice would you give them?
I think two things. Flexibility is key, the ability to quickly adapt to changing circumstances. I think that has proven essential for ports and terminals. That also includes having flexible workforce arrangements and operational protocols. The second one is the importance of data. Real-time data analytics help you scan for bottlenecks. This obviously comes from my data analyst mind. I think establishing key performance indicators to measure fluidity, velocity, and reliability allow ports to identify areas for improvement and then implement changes based on those data-driven insights.
Yeah, well said, Ines. Thanks again for joining me on Supply Chain Insight. And as always, your insight and perspective were extremely helpful. To our valued audience, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again soon for another episode of Supply Chain Insight, brought to you by the Port of Choice, leading green for 20 years, the Port of Long Beach.